I'd just like to add to that the other side of that is when you look at, we've always talked about in the district, and I think it may even be one of the objectives listed in our board packet, but to create equality across the district in terms of class sizes. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with some of those statistics, and I didn't bring anything with me that I could share with you, but there was not equality across the district. Some of the classes in Elderton had very, very, very small classes, and that's great for them. But, you know, I would think that in order to do what's best for the entire district, there should be equality across all of the different attendance areas, across all of the schools. So I think what we'll probably see it at the end of the next, when all of the other financial reports come out, when we take a look at the average cost to educate students, it's going to be more on the same level across the three schools, West Shamokin, Katanning, and Ford City. You'll see it being a little bit closely aligned, whereas every year that I looked at these statistics, Elderton had the highest cost per student. And really it all had to do with their enrollment, because the enrollment was so low and they still had to staff it with just as many teachers. It caused a really high cost per student. So we'll, like Joe said, I think we'll see some of that stuff come in over the years. We get close to the end of the fiscal year.
Okay. What's the story with Elderton High School's secession to Apollo Ridge? Was there interference?
No, I was we had a small committee that actually met with Apollo Ridge. We had one meeting, myself and Dr. Solak and our solicitor at the time. We met with them to see where they were at with things and some questions that they may have. And at that point, the business manager said they basically exchanged questions on finances. There's been some talk around that we had kind of stalled it because of cost of buildings. There was never a cost of buildings that was ever negotiated with Armstrong School District. Apollo Ridge made it very clear that they had two criteria to meet, and they had to meet educationally and it had to be financially. First two things, and they said they couldn't provide what they provide at their own school educationally, what they would want to put there, and they couldn't do it financially. They did make the indication early on that they never wanted anything to do with the Katanning Township building. They didn't want it at all. So those kids at that point they could consume those kids either in the Elderton Elementary or their own elementary school. So they never even wanted it in the beginning. So they basically did their own report and severed that secession effort on their own.
I also believe that the whole Hero and the Apollo Ridge thing, I never believed really that it was for real. I think that group, I think they did have a long-term plan, and they needed to delay our decision. And they even came to us and they asked at one of the meetings, because we voted to close it, if we would allow them proper due diligence time to go and see if they could pull out or join another neighboring district. They went out and they talked to, I believe, Indiana, Leechburg, and Apollo Ridge. Apollo Ridge is really the only one that I think gave them any kind of time of day and let them talk. But I don't think us as a board did anything to interfere with their efforts to try to do that. I think they drug it out on their own, knowing what long term, that they knew those seats were going to come up at the election. And they knew once they had power, if they could just stretch it out, they would be able to reverse the decision that we made to close it.
Just to add too, I think the perception of interference is they wanted us to give the building away for free and then not take any of the debt service with them. So in their mind, we interfered, but we would not accept that. We did attach a cost to the building, and we would have given them a percentage of the debt service, Apollo Ridge that is. and to, I think, Hero and some others, that was interference.
Thank you. What were your reasons for voting, I'm going to just say for the reopening, or excuse me, for or against reopening Elderton High School?
Well, I voted to close it naturally, so if I was going to go through all that grief and aggravation that we went through for 2 years, then I certainly wasn't going to change my vote and reopen it again. But just briefly on the educational value that Chris had mentioned about the class sizes, talking with teachers. Teachers enjoy having more kids in the class rather than 4 or 5. It makes the scheduling better for that building because the classes can be scheduled a couple of times a day versus once. There's some advantages to having some building enrollment that it makes it a lot easier to manage. Plus the savings that you can experience when you've reduced your staff. That's one of the biggest costs of a school district is the salaries that we pay. And, there's a lot of debate. People can argue the point of what a teacher's salary is, what a teacher makes, and you can argue that all you want to in a group, a small group, a big group. But if you think you're going to tackle and you're going to get teachers to work for whatever you think they're going to work for, half the price or whatever, so that you can make it manageable, I don't ever believe that's going to happen. But the control that a board does have, ultimately, you can control how many you employ. So if you don't need them, you don't necessarily have to have them. So when you experience retirements and you don't have to rehire people, those are savings that you can enjoy. It's not that I'm out to, we want to just lay teachers off and get rid of them. If you don't need to have them through retirements, it's a plus for you as a district.
I, like Joe, also voted to close Elderton, so when the vote, I guess, came up to reopen it, why would I change my mind that quickly? And for me, going back, we delayed the closing of Elderton. If you remember, when Dr. Kerr originally made the presentation to look at closing it, if we would have, and I was one that was pushing pretty hard to do it in that first year, because the savings to the district would have been even greater than the number that Chris threw out, because at that time, we had and I don't remember the exact number, but there were a lot of teachers that were going to be retiring, so we wouldn't have had to replace them. It would have just, if the timing of closing Elderton at that point for the district, financial only, that's what it made the most sense. And if you remember, at that time, we were close, but it ended up, they asked for, they wanted that whole other year, and another board member decided to give them that time, which is why the closing of it got delayed. But if you go back to when Dr. Kerr originally presented, we would have saved a whole lot more than the 2.5.
I'll just make it quick too. Just in in my decision-making process to originally close Elderton, you looked at the enrollment and it was low, and I think everyone here knows it was low. They're graduating between 30 and 40 kids. But when you look at the projection, the Department of Ed puts these projections out every year. It shows you what the enrollment's going to be in the future, and you take that into consideration along with the architect's renovation estimates. Not to make light of it, but it really was almost a no-brainer. It was almost a situation where, you have to make this decision. It was hard to justify keeping it open in my mind.